at the beginning it's maybe okay and it's acceptable and but then that hyper feminized man doesn't serve her polarity, the essence of who she is as it needed.
Welcome to the Awake with Jake show. I'm your host, Jake Woodard, and it is my mission to help you break through mental barriers, gain clarity, and awake. What's going on, my soul family? Welcome to episode number 75, and I am so excited for you to listen to today's episode. We dive deep and we talk about one-night stands, womanizing, and how to be vulnerable as a man in today's world. We talk about masculine, feminine energies and how to understand them better. I'm so excited to share this episode. It was a powerful, transformational episode. And by the way, just a quick little reminder for my next spiritual retreat coming up June 13th through the 17th. I currently have one spot left. So if you would love to be a part of this and do some deep work with me in person, go to jakewoodard.com/coaching. Some of the things we'll be doing at this event are Kundalini yoga, breath work, energy healing, guided meditations, nature immersion. There'll be vegan food. It's just going to be an amazing, amazing experience. So if you want to fill that one spot, go to jakewoodard.com/coaching and fill out the application. Welcome to episode number 75. On today's episode, I interview an amazing human being. His name is Stefanos Sifandos. He facilitates transformational growth through neuro-empowerment practices, an integration of spiritual practices and Western psychology to improve and enhance the quality of your relationships. He believes that intimate relationships and sacredness and union is a direct path to enlightenment and freedom. Welcome to the Awake with Jake show, my brother. I am honored to have you here.
Oh, the honor is mine. Thank you, my brother.
Are you standing up over there?
Yeah, you know it.
Yeah, you look pumped up over there. We're about to get a good interview here. So why don't you tell me and the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I often say, well, it's not me that says it. Dr. John DeMartini says, often, not always, but often our voids become our values. And when I look back at my life and I reflect daily on my life, usually for that day or for the week, if I were to put it in a time construct. There's sometimes my mind just carries and I start thinking about where I've been, where I've come from, where I am today, where I'm going, and all of that. And I think about what I experienced when I was younger, and I think about how I predominantly felt and how I interpreted the world and how I experienced the world when I was younger. And a lot of those feelings are feelings of isolation, feelings of disenchantment, feelings of feeling very, very much alone, being alone, feeling alone, perceiving to be alone, misunderstood, not heard, not seen for who I was. I felt I didn't have a voice. And it's interesting, the work that I do now, the service that I put out into the world now. And I think about that often, and I become very grateful as an adult. As a child, it was a very bit of a different story. You and I were speaking before, and you would tell me some of your story, and I was really resonating. I was thinking, wow, am I listening to myself here? It's I grew up in a very violent household. My father was very violent, physically violent, emotionally abusive. He and my mother were also violent, emotionally, physically. It was a very volatile environment. And the interesting thing was, and I look back at this as I look at attachment styles and so forth, and I look back at my upbringing. It was volatile. In other words, I didn't know if one day I'd be hugged or the next day I'd be hit. And that was the interesting part of it. And so I developed this very acute way of seeing the world. And I even remember when I was younger, I'm still going into this now. I've immersed myself on a journey of some shamanic training from Peruvian lineage, and something that I've been wanting to do for many, many years, but I haven't really been ready until now internally. And I was looking at this, and I would be able to amplify my senses when I was younger and also draw them back in. And that is a bit of a side note, but it was a protective mechanism to sort of block it. When I say amplify, like everything would be so loud I couldn't hear the detail, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain. I'm still trying to explain it, but it was a protective mechanism to sort of escape from my reality. And then sort of fast forward, I really withdrew from the world, and I didn't feel that I connected to anything. I didn't feel that I belonged anywhere. It was difficult because I grew up in Greece and Australia. You can probably tell my accent's Australian. And some of you may be able to tell. But I was born in Australia, but grew up in Greece for the first few years. My first language was Greek. And I came back to Australia. So I felt disparate in myself. I missed home in Australia, in Greece. I missed my family in Greece, missed my family in Australia. And it was just a really awkward time. And so I very much withdrew from the world, but I had so much to say, yet I kept it in. Now you can't stop me talking, right? So I kept it in for a long time. And we were talking about this before a little bit. We touched on it. And I hit sort of my teenage years. And I just felt like I was about to implode, explode. Just, it was all gonna happen. And so it did. Became very aggressive, very frustrated. I was bullied a lot, and then I became the bully. Not too much of that, but enough just to let the people in my environment know that, I didn't want to be fucked with anymore. But that became a pattern. And so I became, aggression, frustration, violence was the norm. My father was a very agitated man and a very, very dense in his energy, and I became that. And that's not to blame him. I just emulated what was familiar to him. And I took that into the world. I took that into my adulthood and my relationships. I was never physically violent in my intimate relationships, but I was emotionally abusive and not present and dishonest, massively dishonest. My biggest learning curves have been how to tell the truth as a man and also just as a human being, full stop, in any relationship. And how to really express truth without coming from a place of fear. Because that really stunted me in what I did in the world and how I expressed. I was unfaithful in my relationships, massively unfaithful. I didn't care for anyone but myself. And the paradox of that was I would pretend I would care because I wanted to appease others. I had this people-pleasing aspect of me. And I had this hyper-selfish aspect of me that just wanted to find reprieve and satisfy my own needs because they were never met when I was younger. So I'm making some psychodynamic, psycho-emotional connections for the audience here without making it too elusive and understanding. But essentially, I evolved in my adulthood being very, very angry and very disconnected. And so when I was in a relationship a few years ago, that relationship came to an end because there's a number of reasons why, but she discovered that I was unfaithful, and that took me on a completely new trajectory, because witnessing the pain that my actions had contributed to her state and that had caused her was very, very confronting for me. And because I'd been living in the shadows for so long and suppressing so much, everything came to the surface very quickly. And I had two choices: either continue the same path I was on and remain in ignorance and just brush this experience off as, hey, I'll learn from it. Maybe she's not for me and I won't behave that way again. That was too extreme, and move on and not really go deep into it at all. Or go deep completely, fully committed, all in. And I chose the latter, and I am where I am today because of that. We fast track a few years. There's been... I say often I've been to hell back maybe 1 billion or so times and more. And I'm grateful for that. And everyone, not everyone, but so many of us experience our own pain and suffering. And my pain is no greater than anyone else's in any capacity, or less than anyone else's. It's not about that. And what I've experienced in my life has really taught me a great deal around the various aspects of self, and has helped move me towards a greater sense of wholeness, as opposed to I felt very fractured and broken in my life. Reality was I wasn't. I experienced that. I thought that was my reality. And so unraveling that and unlearning all of that was a big, big lesson for me in a movement towards embodiment.
Why do you feel that people struggle so much with commitment? I noticed one of the things that kept showing up for you was lack of being faithful and stuff like that. When you're in a relationship with another person, why do you feel that people struggle so much to just commit to one person?
Yeah, there are so many possible reasons, and I'll go through what mine were for me, what happened. And so growing up, I observed. So let me actually honor your question in two ways. Let me give you a quasi-objective answer, and then I'll go through a personal experience. And so objectively, one of the key reasons why people struggle to commit in relationship is because they're scared of speaking their truth or expressing their truth, and they're coming from childhood wounding or past wounding. It doesn't necessarily even childhood, it's just past wounding that's influencing them and impacting the decisions they make in their present life. Essentially, they're living their past in their present. because they haven't equilibrated or neutralized or dealt with the pain of the past. And so we're scared to be seen. We're scared to be open and vulnerable. We're scared to be intimate because we become exposed, or we think we're exposed. And if we're exposed, that's dangerous. Then something may happen that has happened in the past to us. And we make those implicit or unconscious associated understanding of where we're at right now. And so we behave from a protective place, which is essentially we're living in stress. In short. So my experience is that, and the specifics of that was, I witnessed my parents and I witnessed my mother saying often, never get married, don't ever be married. It's the worst. My freedom's gone from me. My mum would say this all the time. I'm like, wow, okay. And they're still together, by the way. That's another story.
There's a lot of couples out there like that though. Right now, even people maybe even listening that are in a relationship that they're not fully fulfilled with, or they're single and lonely and they just don't want to deal with their stuff.
Yeah, correct. Because being with someone else brings your stuff up. So we either have we have two choices. We either deal with it and say and welcome it, or we suppress it and go back to old behavior. And that's a lot of what I did. And so for me, the specifics for me was I witnessed that, and I witnessed and even in my friends, because I grew up with ethnic friends, so Croatians, Italians, Portuguese, Europeans, and their parents were very similar to mine, very, very similar. Like attracts like. And so I witnessed all these primary couples in my life, older couples as a child, having very dysfunctional relationships. And so I brought that notion of understanding into my adulthood, and I thought, I didn't really think consciously, it was more unconscious. Wow, if this is what relationships are, man, that I feel restricted. I feel my freedom's been taken away from me. And for me, I used 2 or 3 scapegoats, or 2 or 3 suppressants or avoidant techniques. First was training, excessive physical exercise. I would push and I'm talking about aesthetic stuff. I'm talking about taking my body to extremes. What could my body do? Because I tie myself out so much that I didn't have space to think about anything. I would womanize, and I would be unfaithful and be with many, many different women, including prostitution, just the whole gamut. Or I would work a great deal, build businesses. My businesses would burn. I'd build other ones. I'd just entrepreneur, just building businesses.
I think we should stop right there too, because especially for the men listening, because believe me, that's all past lives for me too, right? Like those are all things like I work through myself. And as a conscious man in today's world, like, you think it's so cool growing up, like, being with a bunch of different girls, have a bunch of different girlfriends, but like at some point you gotta realize that maybe that's not the best path. And if you want to be in a committed, sacred relationship, maybe with just one person, if you want to be with multiple people, that's fine, but it's your own choice and you're also your own karma. But, at some point you have to move past this lustful vibration, right? Of just operating from the needs of a dog and just wanting to pump, squirt, and move on. Like, you gotta transcend that animalistic behavior. And it's not easy. Working with the sexual energy to transcend that upward through the higher chakras is not an easy path. And any man that has done that work knows how hard it is to do that. And especially for the women listening too, like realize that the man's sexual energy is so powerful. Like, I mean, women's sexual energy is powerful too, but for a man, like it can totally consume a man's mind. Like I started watching pornography at 11 years old, 11 years old. 3 to 4 times a day. Like you imagine the programming that goes on within the mind, the psyche of a man. It is so deep and dark. Like to extract that is like going like 2,000 feet below the earth's surface and digging that shit out. Like it is heavy, man. So I want to hit on that point, because if you're a man and you're womanizing and you think it's cool, like I can assure you, brother, like I've been there, you've been there, like it's not the path, and it will never bring you fulfillment. Never.
It's empty. It's a fucking void. And it's a void for a number of different reasons. For the reason that you just mentioned, and because it's suppressing what we really want to feel. What we really want to feel is connection and intimacy. I'm not saying you can't have multiple sexual partners, but what's your intention? What's your come from? You've got to have your come from in clarity and grounded in presence, in your own presence as a man. And mine wasn't. Mine was scattered, man. Mine was like, my sexual energy was all over the place. And so was my mind, and so was my body, and so was my heart, and so was my attitude. Everything was just scattergun. And sexual energy is life force energy is so powerful. So powerful. And we
And you're
misuse
taking
it
in
all
all
the
the
time.
other energy of the people you're sleeping with.
Yep.
Every time you sleep with someone, you're just taking it in.
I spent 9 months, bro. 9 months. Okay. Maybe it was 10 or 11, nearly a year, shifting all of the, at an energetic spiritual level. And there's some physiology there as well, shifting and moving all of my previous sexual partners from me. I went through a process with a healer.
Cleaning house.
every week, sometimes twice a week, moving stuff through me.
People don't think that stuff is real because they don't think that deeply. They don't feel that deeply, but oh my God, energy is so powerful. And when you stick your genitals into another being and you intertwine the energy and you merge those energies, you are going to take on their energetic vibration. It's just like taking on someone else's trash. Like you're going to take on all the good, all the bad. So like a lot of times, like if I had like a one night stand with somebody, I felt so crappy the next day. And I never understood it consciously why, but I was like, man, I feel like shit. Why is this? But now looking back at it, it was the path of taking on someone else's energy. They're like dirty energy, essentially. I mean, because if you're going out to a bar room, sleeping with random people, that's a lower vibrational energy. So you're taking all that in.
And you don't know that person. There's no deeper connection there. And yeah, one could say, oh, okay, but I'm really attuned to myself in all ways. I don't know about that. But there's something called microchimerism. Chimerism or chimerism. I say chimerism. So microchimerism. And it's not a complete, it's a science, but it's a pseudoscience because it hasn't been completely proven yet. But there's more and more studies being done on this. So when a man basically has sex with a woman, they've found, it's hard to explain because I haven't fully grasped it yet because it's medical science essentially. But basically his DNA remains in her, the short of it is. And they've done these studies on different women that have had children, women that have male children, women that have had female children, women that have been with different men, women that have not been with men. It's still ongoing, but microchimerism, something to look into anyway. But essentially it's what you're saying, but it's not just the energy. We're not just talking about it's grounded in also physiology as well, that we're taking people's DNA when we're with them. It means when you kiss someone, you exchange saliva, you're exchanging DNA. And the vibration of that DNA and what it brings with it. And think about that. Oh, it's horrible.
It is, man. It's so interesting.
When it's unconscious, it's just, we don't know what we're doing and we just scattergun. And I was like that so much.
And the one night stand too, for a woman can leave her feeling so empty because a woman's yoni is directly connected to her heart. And if she orgasms with that man, she feels so attached to him. And then if he just, hits it and quits it or whatever, what you want to call it, and just ups and leaves, like she gets hurt and she feels even more empty. But she thought that she was connecting with him at a sexual level. And that's all you ever did was a lustful sexual connection. And you're still at the level of body, right? There's no heart. There's no intention. There's nothing else in it. It's just body to body connection. Once again, we're operating at the level of two dogs. Like two dogs meet each other, have sex and leave, go on. But the dogs don't get attached to each other. That's the difference. The humans, they create these codependent relationships. And then the relationship ends up becoming a 17-year one night stand.
It's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, a very interesting way to put it. I love that.
Oh man, it's an interesting dance in this human experience for sure.
Very much so. And so much of it's unconscious. Literally. I mean, we know that 95% of everything we do is driven by our unconscious selves. And if we don't keep that in check, we're dancing with a blindfold on. Now, nothing wrong with dancing with a blindfold on if you know you have a blindfold on. And you make your way around that, and it becomes an immersion. Yet we're blind to our blindness. That's a big difference.
So now that you've grown spiritually as a man in a relationship, what are some of the ways that you've found yourself really deepening that connection with your partner now?
For me, the starting point was deepening the connection to myself. And it was really taking ownership of everything that I was and everything that I wanted to be and everything that I am in the moment. And so holding presence with myself, being a witness to what was unraveling within me, whether it be a mental construct, whether it be an emotion, whether it be a belief system that I was unpacking, whether it be a painful experience, and really holding presence to that, practicing the type of man I wanted to be in the world with myself first. And that was quite a journey in and of itself. And so what I bring to an intimate partnership now is what I couldn't bring before: openness, transparency, truth, vulnerability, courage, persistence as well. Persistence is a big one. Patience and effort. My attitude before was, oh, we're having an argument. This relationship's not for me. Obviously, we're not meant to be here together. I'm out.
So you grew through all these stages together that within the relationship you're in now.
No. The relationship I'm in now is a new relationship. And it's the relationship I was speaking to earlier was about 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But, and still, even in the relationship you're in now, I mean, you still dip back into unconscious moments. I mean, we all do it, right?
We all do. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, we all do. And how I deal with that is I breathe into that. And I ask, where's it coming from? Is it coming from habitual patterning? Is it coming from fear? Is it coming because it's something that I really yearn for? And if it's something that I really yearn for and that's legitimate, how do I then have that conversation with myself? I clarify it within myself first, not just mentally, but in my body, emotionally, spiritually. And then I bring that to my partner. And I say, hey, these are some of the thoughts that I'm having. This is really important for me to discuss. This is what I'm thinking and feeling. This is where I would like to go with it. What are your thoughts? And so I lead that conversation. I come with a plan. I'm clear. Whereas before in the past, I would just hide it. I would suppress it and I would just go have sex with other women. That's what I would do. I just would ignore it. I'd ignore the pain. I'd ignore anything.
It's the escape goal.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. I just didn't. Sometimes I turned to alcohol. In my early years, I was not an alcoholic, but I was into alcohol. Never hit hard drugs. Never hit hard drugs. I was too much into health to do that. But then finally, when alcohol took its toll, I just said, I can't do this anymore either. And so I moved away from alcohol as a suppressant.
I feel like sexual addiction can be a hard drug. I mean, with the amount it can consume your mind,
right.
You know, with the amount of feel-good hormones that are released from ejaculation, you know, so I think that's a high we're always chasing. You know, as men, if you look at us millions of years ago, our nature was to be hunters, right? Yeah. So we were chasing down a kill. And in the modern world, like we think that kill is a pretty girl in the bar room, but once again, you can't, man. Like you got to outgrow that.
And that's the whole point of there is some honoring that we can have to our evolutionary biology. And we also have this thing called the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe that takes 40% of our brain up, is the distinction between us and other animals. And so can we start, it's relatively new, but can we start to leverage that? Can we start to use that as an access point to greater levels of consciousness, awareness, and being, so that we can shift from these pure primal states 100% of the time to not needing to be in that stress response, or not needing to be in that hunter-gatherer I need to achieve, my goal is to have sex with her, I've got to do that at any cost. And move out of that to some degree. You know? And again, I'm not saying that raw primal sex is anything wrong with that, or we have to, that's a devolved way of being. Not at all. Definitely not. What I'm saying is that most of what we do, too much of what we do and how we are in the world, is way too unconscious and unchecked. And it's not really coming from what we truly desire. It's coming from patterning and conditioning of the past, which is intimately linked to fear. Fear of not being seen, fear of not being heard, fear of not being connected, fear of being rejected, humiliated, abandoned. And that's what's driving us in the world today, especially as men. Rejection, humiliation, abandonment, man, that cocktail for men is 100% alcohol. It's not a 30%, not a 6% beer. It's 100% alcohol. They're drinking that and it's toxic. They're dead. And so we avoid it like the plague.
And now you throw sexual, lustful desires in there too. And now you got a real explosion waiting to happen, you know? And that's most of the men in our world. And I was one of those men for a long time. So I can speak clearly to it, looking kind of on the outside, looking in now. It's like, you know, I still at moments have those unconscious moments, just like we were talking about. But I've allowed myself to go deeper into it and feel and breathe and be with it and be with my hurt and not avoid it and not judge it. That's a beautiful thing too. Yeah, not judge it. How do you feel, you know, we'll speak to the men too, but I mean, obviously women can benefit this. How do you feel that people within the relationship can open up more to experiencing more love and vulnerability?
I think we just have to share ourselves more. Every time, brother, I've put myself out there in a relationship, I shouldn't say, well, no, I will say this. Every time I've done that, I've benefited from it. Now, in the past, I've been erratic with who I've shared myself with because I was on the learning journey of not sharing myself and now sharing myself. So I made some mistakes along the way, quote unquote mistakes. In other words, I was sharing with people that couldn't hold that trust. I thought I respected and revered them and trusted them, but they couldn't hold that. They weren't mature enough to hold that. And I wasn't mature enough to give it in that way either. And so you learn along the way. I learned along the way. So, but I've always benefited. I've always learned something, always. I've always grown from it. Now I'm selective, not selective of who I'm about around being vulnerable, but selective of who I'm vulnerable with. Not because I'm going to get offended or become offended or I'm going to become deeply hurt, but because some people just can't handle that truth. And so we build and we stack. We stack experiences over time and we develop a historical context and a bond over time with people by sharing more of ourselves. And so with my fiance now, from the get-go, we were both extremely honest. We just had a conversation the other day, literally a few days ago on the plane, saying no matter how hard a conversation may be, we need to promise each other that we'll have that conversation with us and we'll meet each other with compassion and non-judgment and love. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if I turn around to you and say, listen, I have to spend 12 months in the Himalayas. I just have to. This is what I need to do. Or if she turns around and says, I need to be polyamorous right now. Whatever, because we're not in that type of relationship, in that dynamic. Whatever it may be, whatever difficult conversation it may be. Hey, I can't be with you anymore. Whatever it may be. Hey, I don't want to have children. Or hey, I want to have 3 children, not 1. Or whatever it may be, or whatever agree. We have to meet each other with compassion and non-judgment. And play that practice. And every time I see that she's holding back with something, I said, talk to me. What is it you want to say? She said, I don't want to say this because it may upset you, or that's some of her pattern, or I don't want to be repetitive. And I say to her, it's okay. You need to speak.
And you don't try to fix her. That's a big one.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I want her to get into a habit of expressing honestly, and she wants that from me. And so she meets me with compassion, non-judgment. I almost don't have a choice. To hide anything from her, because as each day passes and we stack experiences of trust upon themselves, I realize that it's very, very easy for me to speak my truth. Maybe, shouldn't say easy, maybe difficult, but it's very possible. And it's not going to be met with backlash. It's going to be met with love. Maybe there'll be challenge and tension there, and that's okay. That's the dance, right? That's life. But ultimately, the core essence is compassion and non-judgment. Very powerful.
And also too, like when you're really intuitive in a relationship, you're not going to be able to hide stuff. So you may as well just come clean and speak it. Why do you feel that, a lot of relationships will experience a sense of like anxiety between the two people?
Because the people are scared to be seen, brother. They're scared to be seen, or they're scared to let other people down. That's a big fear and a trigger and a trauma for people. They're scared to let people down because when they have in the past, there's been a tremendous emotional or physical backlash, or even spiritual backlash. And people are afraid to be seen for who they are, and they're really afraid to disappoint people and let people down, especially if they're a people pleaser mentality. They're afraid to be rejected and abandoned and be told that they're wrong. We don't want that. So that's massive trauma to the psyche. We equate that, the brain equates that, and studies have been done on this, to again, us being chased by some large animal in the middle of Africa 80,000 years ago. It's, we do, and so we avoid that trauma like the plague. Right. We avoid it as best we can. And so to develop that ability to be more open in relationship, we have to learn how to trust ourselves, and we have to do the inner work. We have to explore the shadows within us so we stop judging. For me, man, the moment I cease to, and I still do judge myself, absolutely, but the moment I cease to really dial down the judgment within me and stop being so hypercritical and hard on myself, all my relationships immediately changed. They were more loving, they were more endearing, they were more open, they were more connected, they were easier, they were softer in terms of we were able to communicate, and there was greater levels of empathy because I stopped unconsciously projecting my own self-judgments onto them, thinking, well, what do they think of me? Or how are they seeing me? I better behave this way. I better do this. I better protect myself. I dropped all of that bullshit, all of it. And they met me there. They met me in that place. And those that couldn't, the friendships dwindled away. And that's fine. It was painful, but it's fine.
Well, that's a letting go process too. And when you're really judgmental of yourself, you're really judgmental of your partner.
And everything else.
Yeah. It just makes life like one big shit show.
Yeah, because it's easy to project. The ego loves projecting. The ego doesn't want to take responsibility. It's easy for me to say, you know what, Christine, why are you doing this wrong? I'm feeling like this. It's your fault. Stop behaving that way. And I don't take responsibility for it. It's easy to do that. Or because if you just behave this way, then I'll feel better. Hello, hashtag codependency.
It's funny on your tattoo there on your arm, I see the chakra system. And I had this realization the other day that most relationships they exist in the first 3 chakras, and they never experience the heart and the higher levels of consciousness because they're stuck in that safety, security, survival mode. They're stuck in the lustful sexual desires, and they're stuck in the power and the control and really needing to be powerful in the relationship. And once again, those first 3 chakras, it's not that they're bad or good. It's just when you transcend them, you experience such a deeper sense of bliss within your relationship and within your life, because you're involving the consciousness of the intuition or enlightenment or even the heart energy too. So there's just so much more there. What are some practices that you've developed over the years that you really love, that you really feel have helped you transcend in consciousness and really fully start to heal yourself?
Yeah. I like to, it's a great question. I like to provide very simple examples that have simple yet so powerful that have really helped me. Spending deliberate time in nature, connecting to nature, whether it be the ocean, the rainforest, the mountains, whatever, it'll be a park. And just being in that solitude, not loneliness or isolation, big difference. In solitude, deliberate time and space in your own being. And depending on what you want to do, you may just sit in silence. You may just want to sit in expansion and stillness and listen and hear and close the eyes down and maybe even put some noise cancelling headphones on, just be in your own space, but be connected to earth. Or maybe you want to journal, you want to read, you just want to be in that vibration of earth and energy and nature. That's been a big part of my journey, and it's really helped me in terms of giving me perspective with what really matters in the world, and to stop sweating the small stuff and stop focusing on the bullshit and what doesn't matter. And nature has really provided me with that insight, that deep, deep wisdom. That's one of the tools I use. You call it a tool, one of the experiences that I partake in very regularly. Another one is movement. Doesn't matter how you move, whether you're doing yoga, whether you're walking, particularly if you can move in nature, even better, combine the two. Very, very powerful. Whether you're weightlifting, you're swinging kettlebells, you're boxing, whether it's something more masculine or something more feminine, something more yin, more yang, doesn't whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. But movement's very important, and deliberate movement as well. Allow your body to move through time and space. Allow it to elevate. Take yourself to the edges, the physiological edges, and come back again. And experience your edges through the physical body, because we have a body and there's a reason why we have it. Many reasons, actually. That's been very important to me. And then spending time with really close friends, people that don't judge me, people that I trust and I respect and I revere, people that I can look to at times for guidance, and people that I also have a capacity to lead and guide if need be as well. But people that I deeply trust. And then if you can combine all 3, so maybe you've got a couple of brothers that you train with, and you move and you go for a run in the forest with a couple of brothers, that's a beautiful thing. Now, I know that may not be, and I can give you a heap more, of course. Now, I know that may not be a specific exercise that you're journaling or writing down as a 3-step process and all that, and I've got many of those. But we miss the opportunity to be really deeply connected to ourselves through our natural environment and through moving the body. We become stagnant in the body. We're so sedentary, and so our mind becomes sedentary and lazy as well. And so when we move the body, we're developing a habit around momentum. And that's momentum in shift in thought, in emotional state, in our physicality, in our ideas, in our creativity, in all of that. And so it's very, very important for me to move. And I have a deep stillness practice every day. And that changes from month to month or every few months, depending on where I'm at and what cycle I'm in and what I'm actually focusing on, or where I just want to be. But those 3 things are really important. Surround yourself with epic people. Not all the time, Be in solitude, be in nature, and move.
Yeah.
Move your body.
Get your ass off your phone once in a while too.
Yeah.
I got one big one too that I kind of saved for the end, towards the end of the episode. Let's talk a little bit about masculine, feminine energy, because I think there's a lot of confusion around this whole thing. I think me and my brother here are going to clear this up for you. So
Yeah, I feel so.
yeah, let's do that. Let's talk a little bit about masculine, feminine energy, so people understand how powerful and important this is to understand within your own life.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it's quite simple. It's not that complex. Where if we were to equate, it's two sides of the same coin. So every living being carries a feminine and masculine energy or expression in the world. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter what gender type you classify yourself as. It's the world of duality and the world of polarity that we live in. It's as simple as that. If you're hypermasculine, you're holding expressive states that are too masculine and in an extreme way. And you're not really tapping into other feminine attributes. And I'll go into what some of those are in a moment. And the opposite is true as well. And so we want to strike a balance. But that doesn't necessarily mean 50-50. So depending on who you're listening to, someone like David Data, I'm not sure if he still holds true to this thought, but someone like David Data would say, if you're a man, you would hold approximately 70% clean, healthy, masculine energy in you, and the rest is feminine, and opposite for ladies as well. And when he made that statement, it was a number of years ago, and I'm not sure if he still holds true to belief. It was more just really when he made that statement, probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was more binary gender. Now there's more gender fluidity, and that's another conversation, but masculine and feminine energy does not change in any capacity. And so what research shows, or what we understand as well, when we just tap into our own bodies, don't even need to go to research, is we start looking at masculine presence, and presence is a masculine expressive state. Focus, the ability to hold, stillness, attentiveness, functionality, singularity, single-minded focus, rationality, a fierceness, analysis, determination, being purposeful. Michaela Boehm would say go energy and do energy instead of saying masculine energy. Being goal-orientated. These are all masculine traits. In terms of feminine traits, we're talking about awareness, we're talking about surrender, we're talking about compassion, empathy, feeling, being conservative in self. You know, the masculine is very expansive and very, very open and explorative. He wants to explore everything. And when you look back at our upbringing or our evolution, we look at how man protected the perimeter. Man extended the perimeter. Man explored what was safe and what wasn't. And so from that perspective, we can look at masculinity in that way as well. Back to femininity, there's caring. Movement and momentum is very feminine as well. Connectedness is feminine. Flow energy is feminine. Be energy is feminine. Vulnerability, responsiveness is feminine. But when we're saying to men to be vulnerable, we're also saying synonymously be courageous. Courage is a masculine trait. So there's a balance here. And where we look at, so I'm just going to take the current president of the United States, just a very quick example, not to make this geopolitical in any capacity, and my feelings on him are irrelevant. But many of him would say, oh, he's a hyper-masculine man, etc. Not necessarily. In some essences, yeah, but not necessarily. Some people would say that when I look at political commentary, that he's manipulative. Now, manipulation is actually an extreme feminine trait. So in parts of where he is, he's an extreme feminine. I want to give that. I'm just going to drop that there and just leave it. I'm not actually going to expand on it in any capacity. I'm just going to drop it and leave it. This is interesting, right? So we think, oh, leader. If you're a leader and you're an autocratic leader and you're an oppressive leader, yes, you're probably largely in your extreme masculine, because a healthy king doesn't oppress and is not autocratic. A healthy king leads and is somewhat collaborative, but also takes steed of who he is and listens as well. And healthy king carries compassion and empathy in his being. Now, he knows when to push that out into the world or express that, because he carries an innate intelligence in him. Yet that's still a feminine expressive energy, right? Mm. And so I'll stop there, because I know you've got a lot to say on this, and I love your mind, brother. So I'd love to know and hear and feel what you've got to say on this as well.
Yeah, it's so beautiful when you start understanding this, because you can see how it really impacts your own personal life as well as your relationships. And like, for example, with me, like if I'm in my masculine, like all day long, I might actually start feeling like too rigid and uptight because I'm like in the
Yep.
doing, the building phase all day long.
Yeah.
So I need some feminine energy, whether that's the touch through a beautiful woman, my girlfriend, or whether it's going into nature or singing and dancing or
Yep.
something to me that's going to break up that kind of stagnant masculine energy. Great. But what I see a lot of too, because I work with a lot of female clients, is they actually have more of a feminine core, but because we live in this masculine driven society,
Yeah.
achievement, building, goal oriented, all the masculine traits, they feel they have the need to build this masculine shell. And when they
Mm.
do that, they go to connect with a masculine man, and they kill the polarity because they're carrying too much of their own masculine energy, so they can't truly connect with a divine masculine man. They depolarize. Like me and you are in our masculine right now. We're
Yeah.
great friends. You can be in a relationship, masculine, be great buddies, but there's no sexual polarity. And that's what you're
Yes.
really looking for in a romantic, intimate
Yes.
partnership. I'd
Yes.
love to hear you expand on that one.
Oh yeah, and I see this all the time. And like you, I work with a lot of female clients as well. And so what's happened, I love how you've gone into that, brother. And the expectation for us to, because we live in a hyper masculine world, and the expectation for every person to abide by that is killing the genuine flow of polarity. It really is. And so essentially, to a heterosexual masculine man is having sex with a heterosexual masculine woman, and it doesn't work, and vice versa as well. Like a woman sometimes attracts this because she's in a masculine too much for even her to want to be in. She attracts a feminine man, and at some point, at the beginning, it's maybe okay and it's acceptable, and but then that hyper feminized man doesn't serve her polarity, the essence of who she is, as it needed. And
Mm.
so we're losing this ability to deeply connect because we're unable to surrender and step into what David Data would call our natural states. And I really believe that as a man, you have a tendency to be more masculine. And I don't want to use the word should, but it's healthy to be in your healthy masculine as a man. There's something awkward. We haven't quite found this or unpacked this yet in humanity. There's something awkward about a hyper feminine man and a hyper masculine woman. There's something just not quite, quote unquote, right about it. So that tells us something about who we are. Now, striking the balance is a different conversation. Striking the balance is what we're all moving towards. All of existence is every sentient being, every living thing wants to move towards stasis, towards homeostasis, towards balance within itself. That's it. We're no different. And so because we're too smart, we've got to figure out how do we get into balance. And it's actually not that hard. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Understanding it's not that hard.
Thing
Doing it
too with the feminine heart is it so deeply wants to be claimed and ravished and just open to God and the universe. And
Yeah.
that's really the masculine's ability to lead her
Yes.
to that openness and opening her heart. And as a woman, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be claimed and ravished and treated in that capacity with a masculine man, as long as he's doing it in in a divine masculine way, like a healthy masculine way. And I think it's so beautiful in that type of relationship. I mean, yeah, sure. At times she's going to be in her masculine in your relationship. She's going to need to build, do things,
Yes.
and you guys can honor that space and you can play with the polarities. But for most relationships, well, all relationships to work, there has to be the balance of the masculine, feminine. It's almost like the pendulum swinging. It can't just be right in the middle. There has to be the one side of each energy. And you'll notice when there's a heavy masculine energy on both sides or a heavy feminine on both sides. Like if you're both really emotional and you're both in your feminine, then you guys are holding each other. Yeah. Who's holding the space?
No one. You're both losing your shit. Who's holding? And it's uncontrollable. And resentment builds from that place. And I want to touch on something that you just mentioned about the feminine wanting to be taken and ravished. And yes, absolutely. And not always, but there is elements of her heart that wants to be completely open and taken to God, the feminine, I mean. And for that to occur, there must be deep trust. There has to be deep trust. Otherwise, it becomes forced and oppressive. And the masculine needs to be leading from a place of authenticity and congruency and integrity within himself. Because, and I've been there where I haven't been that person. And if it's based on deceit and lies and fear, there is no taking to God. There is no bringing to God. There is only pain being brought and fear and more tension, because the woman's intuitive senses in their brain and body feels all of that. And that just compounds in her experience of, well, you know what? Maybe I can't be in my feminine and I better protect myself, so I'll get into my masculine more and more. And then men complain, oh, why are women in their feminine, in their masculine? Why can't they be in feminine? Because you're a fucking idiot. That's it. And you don't want to look at your shit. And that's the reality of it. I was a fucking idiot for so long. I was ignorant and I was arrogant. And that's the truth of it. And as masculine men, we need to lead. That's a big thing. That's a big thing, man. And that's what I teach you. I said, you want to be a masculine man? Then lead. It's a quality of being a healthy masculine man. And that means you may have to do some hard yards and you have to be patient and persistent. And you know what? It's fucking worth it for you and for her and for everyone else.
Yeah, because you really will come into a divine relationship if you really work on these things. It's really possible. You know, you and I have both experienced this in our lives, and we've shifted it too. And like you were mentioning earlier, doing the inner work, having a stillness practice, getting into nature, being silent, being still, and really focusing on growing that inside of you is so beautiful. I really just want to honor you for coming into this space, and I'm sure the listeners have got a ton of value from this as well. What is one message from your heart that you want to leave with the listeners as we come to an end here?
I say this often, brother, and it's been so powerful in my life. Willingness. Be willing to explore the aspects of self that are painful. Be willing to have the difficult conversations. Be willing to be honest. Be willing to share yourself. Be willing to look at your fears and your pains. Be willing to take chances. Willingness for me covers so much, man. Be willing to give your heart. Be willing to show love. Be willing to receive love. Be willing to recognize and acknowledge your worth and value. That is, willingness for me is man, so much and everything.
Love that, man. Where can the listeners find more about you?
Thank you, brother. Stefanos Sifandos on social media, Instagram or Facebook, and my website, stefanossifandos.com.
Thank you. I'll post all that in the show links for you guys that want to follow him for some more wisdom and inspiration. Thank you again for being here, my brother. I really appreciate it. I am honored to have you in this space.
Thank you, my man. So honored as well.
Thank you so much for spending your precious time here now with me. I hope that something that was said within this episode woke something up within your heart, within your soul, that is going to cause you to take that next step forward in life, to live more free and more fulfilled. And once again, if you're interested in being a part of my next spiritual retreat, go to jakewoodard.com/coaching to fill out the application. There is only one spot left, and this is a first come, first served basis. Thank you so much for listening again. And as always, stay open, stay loving, and stay connected to that beautiful source within you.